after a bit of a break, we have a familiar face here again on Primetime Local News. Stephanie Dobson is with us. Stephanie is a lawyer and mediator at Hankin Divorce Law and Mediation. Stephanie, it's great to see you again.
Thanks. Thanks for having me again, Stacey.
Well, we are going to do a bit of a theme for the rest of this month, and it's going to
Mhm.
be talking about the negotiation process. So basically, to start, we're going to basically talk about what process options means. And I know there's
Mhm.
so much that is involved with divorce and separation. I think that people don't realize a lot of times until they get into it. So let's start out by
Mm.
talking about court. Uh, Basically, when people are starting this process, I think a lot of them think they have to go through court. But when it comes down to it, are there some other options besides going through the court process?
Yeah, and Stacey, I thought this would be an interesting topic because most often when people are separating or divorcing, they're really thinking first about the substance of their issue. So, what do I need to think about for finances? Where should I be living? What's my parenting schedule? So, they're thinking substantively, which is a good start. But what I usually try to do is at the very beginning is to pull people back a little bit after we've talked about content and substance, is to pull people back and say, look, you have some options here as to how you proceed. Now, in our office, we stay out of court completely. So that's all of the services that we provide. So I wanted to highlight a few of those for people who might think, hey, maybe I can stay out of the courthouse. So the first one is what I call your DIY option, sort of the Home Depot option. So it's where spouses will negotiate kind of at the kitchen table, is what I call it. And this is often where spouses will start. So they'll start by talking about, what do we substantively want to do going forward. Usually there's some professional assistance though that's required. If people come in and they say that they've done a lot of the DIY option, usually they've done about 70% of it. If they think they've done 100%, it's usually about 70% and they haven't
Right.
thought of certain things. So then we can look at involving a professional. So there's either mediation or collaborative divorce. And next week we're going to go into those in a lot more detail. But just very generally here today, mediation is an option which involves one professional who's neutral, so not on one spouse or the other spouse's side, and that mediator will help both spouses to arrive at resolution, what I call kind of bridging the gap between the parties as far as perhaps some of that DIY stuff. Then we go on to collaborative divorce, and that's an option which involves each spouse getting their own lawyer. So sometimes people want to have an advocate on their side, and they do want to hire a lawyer. They don't want one neutral person. And so in the collaborative divorce, resolution happens by both lawyers and both spouses working together towards that mutually agreeable resolution. So we focus in the collaborative divorce on the children and focus of an effective future co-parenting relationship.
Well, as always, there's lots to dig into with these subjects, Stephanie. But let's focus on the court. And if you can stay out of court with this process, what are some of the benefits to being able to do that?
Well, there's four things I want to highlight here. So the first one is we arrive at resolution a lot more quickly. So the average of my files in my office would be somewhere between 2 months and 6 months to achieve some kind of a resolution. And sometimes that depends on everyone's calendar more so than the conflict level. Whereas it's usually years in a court process. Second one is privacy. So all negotiations outside of the courtroom remain completely private and confidential, whether it's in mediation or in the collaborative process. Third, cost savings. So in preparation for any kind of a court application or a trial, that we're talking tens of thousands of dollars by the time you get to trial. Out of court options like collaborative divorce and mediation focus on resolving matters by attending meeting by meeting. So I said earlier, mediation, it's either three people meeting together, or in collaborative divorce, it's four people meeting together, lawyers and spouses. And we can resolve your matter meeting by meeting by meeting. And so really you're only paying for a 2-hour meeting if that's how long we meet. And then the fourth one is resolution you stay in the driver's seat. So it stays in your family's hands. So it's much easier often to accept resolution if it's come to by agreement, as opposed to something that's been imposed by a judge where it's more of a win-lose situation. And one parent really doesn't usually like the result of the court system.
Now, going through this process, Stephanie, it sometimes happens where the spouses do not agree on the process. So, what happens if one wants to go through the court system, but the other does not?
Well, it takes two to tango, says the saying. So you have a choice to negotiate to stay out of that courtroom, but you have a right to litigate. So I often say it's not if you get to resolution, it's how you get to resolution. And so if one party is not willing to stay out of the court system and pushes towards that direction, unfortunately, you may need to go that direction. Though even sometimes when we're in a litigation process, very often you can resolve it before it even gets into a court. But what I often find is that once people understand the benefits of staying out of court and what it means to stay out of court, often that reluctance can go away. So at our office, what we do is we offer a 5-minute free call to both spouses, as long as both spouses don't have lawyers yet. And we try to help to explain what staying out of court means, because so often people don't actually understand that this is even a thing.
All right, Stephanie. Well, good information as always, and we're so glad to have you back. So we'll be back again next week to continue this conversation. Thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Stacey.